So we know that the number one source of relational referrals by far is agents. But
Mhm.
then you got to take it one step further. It's not just agents, it's qualified agents, because you got to separate the two, because it's easy to say, I'm calling all these agents and I'm not getting any business. Well, they may not have any business to give you. So we
Right.
got to stay with the qualifieds. And we know the most productive activity we can do is have outbound conversations with qualified agents. And so here it is. We talked a few episodes back. Every qualified agent's worth about $36,000. Let that motivate you.
Yeah.
For every 10 I choose to call every week's worth the equivalent of about $360,000 a year.
Right.
So I don't mind calling 10 every single week, or 20 every single week, or 30 every single week. But then what happens is you start making these outbound calls. And listen, we talk about other things. I don't want somebody to say, Steve and Frank, all you talk about is cold calls. And no, no, no. Warm them up. We talk about digital marketing. We talk about
Yeah.
emails. We talk about
Mhm.
ways to make it warm so they're not cold. But what we did, you'll hear is this: Frank, I'm calling and I'm getting ghosted. And oh my gosh, I don't want to make any calls. And it starts to become this internal dialogue, like, what's
Right.
wrong with me? Almost like it's a rejection. And listen, I've been there too. I've felt the feelings too. And that's
Yeah.
what brought this conversation up: is what if you feel like you're getting ghosted? And what do I do about it? And let's just put a number to it. Let's say I'm making 50 qualified agent calls every single week, but I just don't feel like everybody's answering. What do I do about
Mm.
it?
Well, there's reasons that we perceive that ghosting is going on. I was careful to say that, right? That we perceive ghosting is going on, it, because a lot of times it is just a perception, right? It's not the reality. The reality is that perhaps they got other things going on, right?
What?
Perhaps, like they're doing something when you called. There is that
Yeah.
reality that,
Yeah.
and we perceive that as they're ghosting me. But I think there's some fail safes that we can look at, and that is one of the main ones we talked about this morning is when we are having a conversation with a qualified agent, and this could be in our follow up, right?
Right.
It could be even on the initial call, is to make sure that we are not talking too much, right? And to
Mm,
make sure that we, instead of downloading products on them, right? I got this, I got that, I got this, I got that, I got, you got all these things, maybe it's just getting to know them as a person and
mm,
asking them genuinely, you know, asking the questions where you show that you're genuinely just curious, about how they're doing or what's going on or what's happening, to where they can just get to kind of know you as a person,
yeah.
right? And that's a really important thing too, Steve, because we talked about this morning too, is, then we're going to feel out a little bit, if we do actually like each other as
Yeah.
people, and that kind of thing. And I just feel like, well, if I started my relationship with a real estate agent or a real referral partner that way, where it was more built on just, hey, who are you?
Right.
Not how
Right.
are you, but who are you?
Yep.
Then I might be, if I'm the agent in that case, I might be more inclined to pick up your call when you
Yeah.
when you give me a call, Steve, because I know you're not just going to download product mix on me and ask me for a deal, right? You're going to, just have a conversation. Yeah, he's a
Right.
nice guy. Hey, what do you
Right.
go? What's going on, Steve? How's it going with you? Yeah, blah, 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 blah. And of
Yeah.
course, you'll always end with, hey, don't forget if somebody pops up, can I count on you? Now
Yeah.
you'll always ask for the business, but it's being genuinely curious about people, I think, is going to help with the ghosting issue. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. 100%. So number one, and you said this, people may be ghosting you because you're talking too much,
Mm.
and it could be about products and programs instead of being curious. And you know what? I wrote down just a couple of things. One of the things that I'm seeing success with, in having, I had 5 agent appointments yesterday, Frank, and I got two more right behind this one. And I think for me, whenever you're initiating a call, so this is where it is a coffee appointment, a coffee call. I think it's important. It goes back to this, and you and I talked about it earlier. It's the art of honor.
Mm.
I think our society has lost the art of honor. And something as simple as this, Frank. Listen, and I always announce the time, by the way, of the call because I want them to know if I told them I'm calling at 2, it's 2 o'clock on the dot. Hey, Frank, it's Steve Kyles. It's 2 o'clock. We have our scheduled 15-minute coffee call right now. Is this still a good time to have a conversation?
Mm,
Because I'm teaching them that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. But second thing is this, Frank, and it can be as simple, and it really is the I'm a student of success. I'd love to hear your story, Frank. When I saw your numbers, it was so impressive to see that you've got 23 buy side transactions in today's marketplace. That tells me you've got a real process to prospecting and you've been doing the work. I'd love to hear the story. And
mm.
it's amazing how many times they're just like, yeah, it's been a tough year. And then the more you just are inquisitive, not inquisitive to pass through to the next question, but saying, well, tell me about it. First off, I was looking, and here's something. It's a sneaky little trick. I always read their bios. So I have Melissa and my team put their bios in my deal. And I'll say, I noticed you got in the business in 2000. I had a lady yesterday, 2003. Same year I got in the business. Man, you've seen a lot, haven't you? And
Mm.
it goes back to two things. I've honored them in my first statements. I've done enough to at least know who they are and at least find a little bit of history. Like one of them's, their family's been in Katy, Texas for 125 years.
Wow.
Like what a
That's
legacy.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but listen, it's all because it took me 3 minutes before the call to grab the bio, to read it, to make sure I understood it so that I could be genuinely curious,
Mm.
not pitching products, programs, and things, but it goes back to honor and asking good questions and not teeing up a question to lead them to something that I'm trying to get them to do. It's just about listening. And it's amazing. Frank, and true story, I had one yesterday. She's a monster, monster. By the end of it, she said, you know what? My team and I'll send you our next deal. All I did was
Wow.
ask good questions. And I genuinely thought there's no way. I mean, I was a little nervous. And I know the Steve Kyle's nervous.
Yeah.
I told Steph, I said, these calls are so good for me because, some days it's ironclad, it's
Yeah.
non-emotional. Yesterday, I was getting nervous in some of my calls, and a couple of them were monsters. Sorry about that. And so, but it was interesting. You just honor and you just ask good questions. And I read a little bit of her bio, not a little bit, I read her bio and made sure that I understood. It took me all of 60 seconds.
Right. To
And then
get that
you're just,
information.
yeah. Hey, and so what are you seeing in the market? What do you like? What are you most excited about when you got in the business? What keeps you passionate about building your team and helping families and making an impact? And it is amazing. 15 minutes later, and having said just a few words, she's like, you know what? I've got a couple lenders I work with, but we're going to give you our next deal, and we're going to see if this would work.
That
And I
is
think
so interesting,
and
man.
it was the bigger agents. What I'm
Yeah.
seeing is the bigger agents. You know what I thought when I got off the phone? Number one, nobody prospect her. And
Right. She's
she
too big.
just
Yeah.
respected the fact that somebody called and had an intelligent conversation, asked questions, and presents themselves as a pretty decent lender.
Mm.
She'll know me from
See,
Adam.
so that conversation,
Yeah.
if I'm the agent,
Yeah.
right, and I had that conversation with you, if you call me again next week, Steve,
Yeah.
if I'm available to
Yeah.
pick up when you call, I'm probably going to pick up,
Yeah.
and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
what's up? How are
Yeah.
you? What's
Yeah.
going on?" Because it was a genuine conversation where you showed genuine curiosity and just, about me, and we got to know each other a little bit.
That's right.
And in that explorative call, right?
Yeah.
You got to know me a little bit, but you know what? I got to know you too.
Right.
I got to know you too a
Yeah.
little bit. And that is a big difference maker. It really
I
is
think it's
on the
huge.
ghosting side. It's you don't want to show up and just dump a bunch of products. The product thing, I know a lot of people like to lead with that because they have maybe they do really have a really interesting product, right? Like I
Right.
got this first time
Right.
buyer product and it's got all this and all this. It's really great. And even if you have that call with an agent and you get their attention and you let them know about the product, and even if they go, "Oh, that is a good product. Oh, it's
Mhm.
really interesting. Yeah, good to know." Right. But then when you leave that call, and I'm just, okay, I'm speculating here, but I'm just saying if it were me, if I had that call and you told me, and I'm the agent, you told me about this great product or whatever, and I thought, "Oh, that's genuinely a cool product. I didn't know that was out there." Right. And then when our call is done, I might think to myself, well, hopefully I remember that You know what I mean? If I
Mhm.
find that random client, you know what I mean, that
Right.
randomly could probably maybe use that product, right? So it's very limiting in my, in my retention of that conversation, and my, I'm not thinking, well, that was just a really neat conversation, that was a really neat person. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh, that's interesting, well, maybe I'll remember that when the time comes, if it comes. You know what I mean? And so it just, you're not doing yourself any favors as an originator by going down that path. I think the path that you went down, and
It's not memorable.
it's
Yeah,
not
how many
memorable.
how
That's
many
what
times
yeah.
have you had a conversation where you ask good questions and you didn't say a word, but by the end of it, the person's like, "This is the best conversation I've had in forever." It's because you're curious, and
Yeah.
people love to talk about themselves. And you know what I'm finding too, Frank? Very few people are curious about top producers. They don't get a lot of love. They don't get a
Yeah.
lot of
Because they're scared of
honor.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're scared of them. People, I mean, they just don't. I mean, it goes back to being intentional and then following a process. Um, hey, here's the other thing too, and let's keep going. I think we're going to need to make this like a two-part podcast
Sure.
series. So
Sure.
the uh, one of the things that I love too, and I did want to say this before we get back to what number two is. We just did
Yeah.
number one,
Yeah.
simply talking too much, leading with products. Hey, and here's one thing about products: if you're better, you'll lose.
Mm.
If you're different, you'll win.
Mm.
What I mean by that is somebody will come off and have a better rate sheet, a better product, a better program. I don't want to
Right.
be better. I want to be different. And different is
Yeah.
relational.
Yeah.
And relational is asking good questions so that they say, "Man, I don't know what it was, but I really like that guy, Frank.
Mm.
He was really something special." Now, it's my job just to stay top of mind.
Yeah.
So I think that that's what is super important. Here's what I was going to say too, because week two you may call, they don't answer. We get in our head and say, "Oh, they're ghosting me." No, they're not. Remember this: if I'm making warm outbound calls, only 60% answer. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's a
I
warm
mean, I'm
call.
sorry, not
Yeah.
60, it's 40% answer,
Yeah.
60% go to voicemail.
Yeah.
Like when I realize those numbers, for every 10 I call, six are not going to answer,
Yeah.
four will answer on a good week.
And that's on a warm call.
Yeah, and that's a warm call. If it's a cold call, it's 18 to
Yeah.
25%.
Yeah.
So the reason why I say that is, again, we get in our head, we have these limiting beliefs, and it's like, oh, nobody's answering, everybody's ghosting me. True story, Frank. I have an agent I called for 6 weeks in a row. Now, listen, I used to do business with him 4 years ago. In my head, I'm like, this guy doesn't like me, but he's a part of Weichert Realtors, which I go to every other week. I've called him. It was between week 6 and 7, and I literally told Steph, I said, "Man, this guy Scott, I don't know if he'll ever refer me again." Last Monday, calls me, and he didn't even call me. He said, "Call Alejandra.
Call this
They're
person.
buying a $1.3 million house, and I need the approval this afternoon." I told Steph, I
Here's
said,
your order, Steve. Call
well,
these people.
and I'm
1.3
dying
mil. Need the approval this
laughing.
afternoon. Go.
Hey, I'm dying laughing. At least 6 weeks. It may have been longer than that. Doesn't answer, doesn't respond to my text. When I saw him at the office event,
Event. Yeah.
every other Weichert meeting, I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, this guy doesn't like me. I don't think he's going to send me any business anymore. We used to do business. I don't know what I did. All of these dumb things. You know what it is? Nothing. He's just busy.
He's just busy,
So
man.
yeah, and the reality is you don't have to talk to them every week. It's the voicemail, it's the follow up, it's the
Yeah.
conversation, and all you're trying to do. Remember this: it's staying top of mind. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And if you do it more than 2 weeks, you've done it more than 99.9% of every agent in the. I mean,
Mm.
every loan officer in the country. That's
Mm.
it.
I love it. This is I think we stop here on this one because this is
Yeah,
a lot to digest, and I
yeah,
think a lot of people are going to appreciate that. But just to recap it, um, you know, it's number one, asking questions, listening, being genuinely curious, right?
yes,
Having consistent follow up, and it's not getting in our own head, thinking that we're being
mm,
ghosted when people maybe they can't pick up your call right now, right?
right,
That
right,
kind of a thing, sticking with it, right? Following the plan. And then you get a text message that says, here's the name. This is what they're buying. I need the approval letter this afternoon.
yes,
Pretty nifty. pretty nifty.
Well,
So,
we tend to think that it's about us, and my encouragement is this: just follow the plan. The great news about a plan is it doesn't have feelings,
mm,
and fight through the feelings of what you've experienced in the past.
mm,
Oftentimes, if something negative pops up, it's because you've had a negative experience in the past.
yeah.
Here's what I would I would encourage you just to journal through it. I encourage you to address it and say, why do I feel that way when this happens? But trust the process and continue to take action because it actually works. Results will happen if you'll be consistent over time. So,
Mm. Great stuff, man. I
all
love
right,
it.
see you.
Let's get out of here. Adios.